Welcome back, TCS viewers. It is Chris Nichols here from the Camera Store, and today we've got a very special one because we're coming from the Glenbow Museum here in Calgary. We've got special access now. It's on a day when the museum's closed, so it's kind of nice. We get a lot of it to ourselves, just the occasional school group that you're going to hear, and they're doing a little bit of work and maintenance, so you might hear that, but it gives us very interesting access, and we're going to use this access to shoot the brand new Sony RX1R Mark II. Now, Jordan and I did get to see this camera when we went to New York for the Sony A7S Mark II press launch. We were very excited. Of course, it's on the market now. And the design is very similar to the first version. This is an evolution of that camera. So I'm going to take it around here, do some shots, see if the new sensor is going to make a big difference, see what changes we have here, and just have a good time. All right, viewers, so I'm terrified as Jordan walks backwards right now past countless priceless Asian artifacts. I'm going to try to direct him here. Anyways, the RX1R Mark II has some noticeable improvements. The 42.6 megapixel sensor, this way, Jordan. The new viewfinder, excellent. We're going to talk about that. New autofocusing system with the eye detect capabilities. The new low pass filter that's also been this way, that's been put into this camera, as well as some improvements to the movie mode as well. So overall, nice improvements, but the body design, the look, the size, the feel, there we go. All very, very similar to the RX1R, the first version. So familiar, but some big improvements. We're going to talk about them. This lighting is brutal, but this is the perfect camera for it. I mean, one of the great strengths of this combination is, first off, the 42.6 megapixel sensor that Sony makes. Beautiful at low light like this. I'm going to be shooting ISO 3200 a lot today, I predict. All right, guys, we're going to start things off at a brand new exhibit here in the Glenbow, Kaleidoscopic Animalia. Interesting conceptual art. You should check it out. We got a lot of animals, Canadian histories, fashion. There's a lot of textures, a lot of shape. It's a good opportunity to test out the Sonar 35f2. Now, this is the same lens that we had on the original RX1R, but now we're going to see how it mates with this brand new 42 megapixel sensor. All right, guys, so just taking a picture of these white branches here, but what I like about them is against the dark background, we're going to start to see chromatic aberration, especially shooting wide open f2, and I am seeing a lot of it here, blue, cyan, and magenta fringing. Now, before we get too hard on the lens, chromatic aberration is something that we're finding the manufacturers are actually allowing a lot more nowadays because it's so easy to correct in Photoshop. But yeah, you are going to see a lot of it, a lot of blue, a lot of magenta against dark backgrounds. Expect that. If I stop this lens down to about f4, it largely goes away. So it's only going to be an issue when you're shooting wide open, but you're going to see it. Don't worry, it's easy to fix. Okay, guys, so just doing our high ISO ramp up here, shooting starting at 1600. Now, the nice thing about this 42 megapixel sensor is it's proven commodity. We've been using it in the A7R Mark II, and does a great job in low light. And as I'm going through here in the shots, I was going to stop at 6400 ISO, which you can see right about now. But even there, the noise pattern is still very, very natural and good sharpness. Looking at small details here, we're still retaining a lot of good sharpness. I'm going to push it further. We're going to go up to 25,600 and then just see what we get. Now, I'm definitely getting noise in the shadows, some false color, but that's extreme. If you want a good companion camera to shoot friends and family inside buildings, houses, or even a trip to the museum, this is a fantastic camera for it. All right, so I found a piece of clothing here, guys, this skirt, and it's got very fine pattern, should be perfect for showing up moire on this sensor. So I've just taken some shots here and looking at them here now. Now, the RX1R Mark II actually has a unique feature. This sensor has always been without an aliasing filter, of course, but this camera now incorporates a low-pass filter effect. Now, unlike a company like Pentax, for example, who actually vibrate the sensor slightly to mimic this blurring, this is actually a filter that gets slid in front inside the camera. Really, really neat. All right, so I've done my tests, I've looked at these photos here. Even without the low pass filter in place, I'm just not getting moire on this sensor. So maybe Sony's implementing this effect as a sales feature to assuage fears that you're gonna get moire all over the place with no aliasing filter, or maybe it's just to start testing it for future cameras. I'm not sure, but honestly, on this particular RX1R Mark II, I'm not getting moire. The feature becomes superfluous. Now we do have two custom buttons, the garbage button and then a C one on top right next to the exposure comp, but it's great. I mean, would I like a third one? Possibly, you know, but I've got ISO set for custom 1, and then for custom 2 I can change my flexible spot, and I'm finding I'm doing that a lot today, so it's working very, very well. Now, a nice welcome change is the brand new autofocusing system that you'll find in the RX1R Mark II as well as the A7R Mark II. Gives us a lot of nice benefits, faster speed, processing. We still have face detect, and yes, it does work on statues of Buddha as well. But we also get that fantastic eye detect system where we'll actually track the pupil of your subject. Really, really handy when you're trying to get the sweet spot for those portraits. However, I'm going to say one thing here. It is a great lens, but I can even hear the focusing moving forward and backwards, and it's a little bit ponderous. It's not that quick. So we have a really sophisticated autofocusing system, but we don't have the motor and lens system to go along with that speed. So the RX1R Mark II, it's very accurate when it hits. It likes to go to the target in a predictable fashion, but it is a little bit slower, and that has been, you know, not an issue with statues, but certainly with portraits that we've tried out on this camera in the past. All right, so I love this kind of work. I mean, perfect close-up kind of stuff. We can get close to these, but this does bring me to one issue that I have on this camera, and it's the same issue I had on its predecessor. It's this switch here for close focusing. Now, I know it's a mechanical thing. We have to do it to shift the lens elements, but I find it frustrating because I'm going to get in here to focus, try to get focusing close, and it just won't let me. After a point, it's just going to stop. And I'm struggling. I'm like, I'm trying to make it work, and then I have to remember, oh yeah, I gotta click this into the close focusing capability. One piece of advice that I would say is always get in the habit, after doing the close focusing, of clicking in that back to 0.3 meters to infinity. All right, so we are in the minerals and gems section here, and it gives us good opportunity. We found this very hairy sea urchin-like stone. It's called a mesolite, just so you know. It's actually made of hydrated sodium, calcium, aluminum, and silicate. I know that because I read it on the tag. And what it's letting us do is a resolution test here. Now you'll notice this is an A7R Mark II, not the RX1R Mark II, and that's because we wanted to see something here. The RX1R gave us probably the best image quality we'd ever seen up to that point on a 24 megapixel sensor. We want to see, well, is that also holding true here? So we shot the RX1R Mark II at f2 and at f8, and we shot the A7R Mark II at f2 and at f8 on a Loxia 35, a Zeiss Loxia 35, as close a formula as we could find. And the results are actually quite interesting. At f8, no real difference. Honestly, they're both fantastic. At f2, I do see a slight advantage on the RX1R Mark II for sharpness. So there is some benefit to that mated lens with that sensor. All right, so walking through the gem section here, what I did notice is we've got incredible differences between, highlight areas and shadow areas in this place. So I thought, why not do another dynamic range test? I know we've seen this before, but the sensor in the RX1R Mark II, very similar to the A7R Mark II, and still one of your best dynamic range sensors on the market. Now here you can see we boost up the shadows, and there's Kaitlyn, our assistant, appearing in the shadow areas very well. Highlights are still well controlled. It makes this camera great for any sort of high contrast street shooting, landscape shooting, any sort of, alleyways, bright sunlight, dark shadows. It's a fantastic camera for dynamic range shooting. All right, guys, so let's take a break here while surrounded by the splendor of the Canadian wilderness, the mountain vistas you see here, not photographed, painted in the 1800s, to talk about some of the features with the RX1R Mark II that I'm liking and maybe not liking, just overall handling. They basically kept the design the same, and I mean, I guess that's good. We like the original design, but Sony had the opportunity with the A7 cameras to make big changes when they made the Mark II versions. They actually fixed a lot of the issues. And I feel like here on this camera, they haven't fixed any of the issues. The grip is still kind of small and difficult to hold, and you don't have a lot of space for your fingers. Now, of course, the viewfinder is a huge benefit on this camera. We love that they've added it here, and that's probably why they couldn't move the lens over any further, because they wanted this to be able to fit in the body like that. Well, the eye cup that comes with it, that's kind of a pain, because this design, that means you got to take the eye cup on and off. I would have liked to have seen a viewfinder just fixed into the back of the body, sort of like the A6000. I think that would have worked well. Still, I do like the magnification. I do like the way they've designed it. It does give you better eye relief. Good for eyeglass wearers, a little bit more comfortable to use than the tiny RX100 viewfinders that they made for that. Now, you're going to want to rely on that viewfinder because, again, you want steady shots with that big sensor, and also the battery life. Hopefully it'll help with that, because one of the things I've been kind of struggling with on the RX1R Mark II today is the battery life isn't great. We're still using that fairly small X-type battery. Battery life is not one of the pluses on this camera. Look how far the video world has come. I do literally remember looking at these very TV sets, watching TV myself as a kid, and now we've got screens like this, we've got cameras like this, and we're shooting video all the time. Now, with the RX1R, it's no exception, and Sony knows how to make good video. However, they did seem to take away some of the features here. I really see you folks at home using this as a family video camera. You know, it focus tracks pretty well during video. But first off, the manual focus is garbage. It's focused by wire. You can see I tried to do a focus pull here. You got to do it quickly, because otherwise you're not going to be able to turn the ring far enough in one smooth movement to get it to focus any sort of distance. Other things, they've taken away the 4K, and I know that's kind of to be expected, you know, processing issues, overheating issues aside. This doesn't really need to have 4K, but if you're really hard up for that, you're not going to get it here. And they also took away S-Log. Now that's kind of silly. They could have left that in there. I know it's a high-end videographer's kind of tool. The average person's not going to use it for home videos, but it's also already built into the software. It's easy to implement, and that could have at least kept it as a sales feature for somebody who might want to do some video work on this camera. Overall, it's nothing that's going to shine. It's nothing that's going to inspire you. You got it here. You're not going to use it very often. So just some other thoughts that come to mind about the camera here. First off, a touchscreen would have actually been a really nice addition. I'm kind of missing that. Number one, just to be able to choose my focusing areas very quickly on a camera like this, but also just a way to get custom functions on the screen or navigate menus and stuff. Sony's menus are still not great. There's pages and pages of stuff. Doesn't quite make sense where they lay everything out, so that could have simplified things. The other thing that I'm finding on this camera that I'm just finding a little distracting, a lot of distortion in the lens. When you're shooting straight lines and stuff and all you're seeing is curves on the edges, it gets a little distracting. All right, so we've played a lot with the RX1R Mark II. I'm happy we've gotten some good shots. We've gotten a good chance to test it out. But one of the things that people inevitably talked about when this camera first came out is what's going to happen to the Leica Q. So we're actually going to head back to the store and we're going to answer that question for you guys next. We'll see you back there. All right, so we've had a long day of shooting. We're about to head inside to the camera store just to finish up with the Leica Q and the RX1R Mark II. But the skies are pretty dark, and that actually just reminded me, you can actually get a really good flash sync speed on the RX1R Mark II because of that leaf shutter. It's gonna vary based on what strobe you use, but I took a shot here earlier with some studio strobes outside, and I can push 1600th to 2000th of a second, you know, around there, varying depending on my aperture. Now what that lets us do is really cut the ambient light so you can get a nice strong dramatic contrast with your subject sticking out from the flash, and then your ambient exposure going darker. It gives you that nice dramatic look, and that's a big feature to have on this camera. All right, we'll see you inside. All right, so we're back in the store now, and we're sitting with Ron Bubnich, who works at the store with us, and check out his Instagram channel because he does take some very nice photos. And Ron also steals both cameras, the RX1R and the Leica Q, which we're talking about, the comparison between these two. You steal them all the time, every weekend.
Regularly, every weekend.
Without paying for them.
Right.
Yeah, right. But it does give Ron the unique experience of having tried both, and of course I've also tried both. So I just want to talk to you about what you think about these cameras overall. I mean, size-wise, both compact. Certainly this is smaller. But what about overall handling? Just the feel of the Leica.
It is a comparably better feel in this case. You have a little bit more to hold on to. A very, very nice manual focus ring, which is just super clean to use, especially when you're trying to do any kind of punch-in focusing.
Now, this is cute. I mean, I do like the new viewfinder. I like that we don't have to pop it out. Better eye relief than the RX100 series of cameras, but I still like the Leica Q viewfinder more. How about you?
Well, in here, both of them are going to tax a good amount of battery. When looking through the viewfinder, the Q actually has a larger battery, thus giving us more shots.
And higher res on that viewfinder.
Of course, yeah.
Way nice to look
Definitely.
What about the lens? I mean, I know the vast majority of people out there actually really love a 35mm lens.
And I was surprised. I didn't think I was going to fall in love with a 28mm perspective.
I like the 28 better.
And shooting it, I felt I was getting more of an organic experience out of the frame, though some people will swear by the fact that a 35 is kind of the purest.
That's totally subjective.
Of course,
absolutely. But I did prefer the 28. Now, you know, we're not trying to crap on the Sony. I think we both agree personally that we like the handling, the feel, the design of the Leica Q better.
Of course.
But raw image quality, I know the Leica has a look to it, but this is still scientifically way better in pretty much
in almost every sense, yes.
Yes, higher resolution, better sharpness, better low light performance, dynamic range.
Right, right. And in here, I did find I was getting off of the sensor a little bit more muted tonality. However, in here, I'm just not exactly feeling the punchy, warmer tones that we're getting off of that Sony sensor.
Sure, and in post, you can do a lot of work on
Right,
that,
you can push it either way.
What do you think between the two? I mean, is it worth the extra money for the Leica Q, which is the better,
I
camera
just like the handling, and yes, is there some sort of partial nature that I have for this camera?
Because it's got a red dot?
Realistically, if I was to split these two and actually put it into an M-series body and an M-series lens, I'm spending well beyond the cost of this item.
Sure.
So,
it is a bargain for what it is in some ways. You know, I'm going to go on record and say this. I like the Leica Q better as a camera. I still think the Sony RX1R is still the better bang for the buck. You're getting better image quality. And, you know, the handling problems, you can overcome them. You can get past them. You can learn the camera, and you're going to be okay on it. So I still think this is the better purchase right now. But hopefully you guys found it informative. I mean, I did like shooting today. And Ron, thank you very much for joining us.
No problem.
Don't forget, check us out on Twitter. Check us out on Instagram. Look at Ron's Instagram if you have time. You know, and tweet us, talk to us. Let us know what you think between these two cameras. Try to use nice words, not mean ones. And at any rate, we are going to see you guys very soon next time.
Cheers. Thanks.
Hey guys, it's Jordan the Video Guy, and you can see I've got a lot of gear strapped to my body right now. This is the Turbo Ace Jockey with the DJI Ronin on top of it. We've been trying to use the gimbals quite a bit for our episodes, but it's a lot of weight to hang on to. Setup time can be a bit of a problem, so I was really looking for kind of a support. This sounded really interesting to me because we're getting a support as well. We're getting a 4th axis stabilizer. There's a spring on there that'll help us with any movement. So I did use that for this episode as well, the Fuji one that went up last week. And I was able to shoot for 3-4 hours without any real pain. It was really nice in that regard. Trade-off to this thing, it does have a few. The spring does still have a bit of play to it. Now we've played with it a lot of... Well, look, you're supposed to have a camera on these things anyways. This isn't indicative of how it's actually going to work. But I did find there was still a lot of vertical movement, and we really spent a lot of time trying to get the tension on this really sorted out, and still we kept seeing this bounce. And one thing is, it's really tough to know if your settings have moved. There's no index anywhere on the rig whatsoever, so these screws can turn. It'd be great if it actually had an indicator for different rigs you were putting on, a Ronin M, a Movi M5, to know where you could start to tune those up. There's no indications, anything like that. Feels a little half-baked on that side. The other thing too is the way that this thing pokes down on the belt with the gimbal. I was doing a lot of low-angle shots. Occasionally I'd sit down to get a shot with this, and it is jamming like right into your balls, like pushing right down on. It's extremely uncomfortable. Good for the ladies, but a struggle for the gentlemen. Lastly, with the design of this, it's actually quite difficult to use yourself. I found I always needed a second person to put the Ronin on top of it once I was ready to use, or if we already had it on the existing rig, to plunk it into my belt. A little bit cumbersome that way, so you will need a bit of crew. But it is a really nice support. The amount of strain I felt, considering how long I was shooting, was really minor with this. And I could see using it for event work, longer shoots. But it does have some limitations, and I think they've misadvertised it a little bit as a 4th axis stabilizer. We still found we got quite a bit of vertical movement, so you need to be aware of that. But if this looks like something that you might be interested in, there is a coupon code below there, which is a nice perk, definitely. Price is pretty good on this, especially compared to some of the larger exoskeletons. So it might be worth a look for any of you gimbal users out there. I don't know how much I'll be using it in the future, but it's been a fun tool.